Good morning. It's the Sunday class with Dan and Lee. Morning, Miss Lee.
Our Sunday class.
Oh, our Sunday class, not the Sunday class. Just ours.
Ours. No one else.
That's true. Well, Miss Lee, it's been such a beautiful day today and this week. We're getting all kind of things done, and it really is a wonderful lesson to me about what we've been doing. Like, we've been helping a neighbor, and there's really nothing, there's no profit in it, but there's profit in it. The Lord is blessing us, giving us things and helping us get things done. And last night, they were over here till late, and it's wonderful and terrible at the same time. It's exhausting. So I think it leads to this idea of the suffering servant that we're talking about with Jesus in the upper room. He's doing this foot washing, and really to illustrate what a servant does. A leader servant serves. And with this one person that came over, I guess it was last night, not before, it's been so busy, I don't know.
This week has been crazy.
But
busy.
I just couldn't get them to focus on what they wanted to do. And it's a good example of how Jesus is trying to get them to focus on serving Jesus and serving others.
I think it's interesting that Peter is like so many people
Yeah.
today, where you do one thing and Peter goes, well, let's do this,
Yeah.
or let's do that, or let me do this,
Yeah.
or don't do that.
They jump.
Peter was kind of all over the
Well,
place.
he's an emotional thinker,
Yeah.
as opposed to Andrew was more rational.
Luke.
Yeah.
No.
But Jesus here is talking about being a servant. So let's just read.
Okay.
Verses we're reading today.
The verses continue, and they are Matthew 26:20, Mark 14:17, Luke 22:14 through 18, and John 13:1 through 20.
And the reason we give you the verses because we're not reading
Verbatim from the
a
Bible.
book. We're reading a historical development of who Jesus is. So the verses are all over because the books are written on subjects like the King, like the Son of Man. But we're going through it in a historical progression.
Putting the four Gospels together that tells the story.
And we're using the book, The Life of Christ Hysteria. So right now we're here.
Okay. And as just an overview, last week we talked about the Passover meal.
Yeah, we're at the end of Passover, or the Last Supper now.
The Last Supper has begun.
The disciples don't perceive it's the Last Supper. They just perceive it's
another
just
Passover meal.
Another Passover.
Right. And at this point, Jesus stood up from the supper and laid aside his garments and girded himself with a towel. He put water in a basin, and then he began to wash the disciples' feet. So here
now
we
this is the
continue.
King, the Messiah. This is so different than the kings of the earth. Kings of the earth have all these servants come in and they bathe him and they take care of him, and he just kind of lets them, give them those pleasures. Jesus is the suffering servant.
For some reason, in my mind, I think of Jesus doing this, and I think of Henry VIII, who became so obese he couldn't even feed himself. Right. He couldn't put his own clothes on, and he just, and he was a cruel, cruel king, and he just killed people at random.
That tends to be what happens when you view yourself as the receiver of gifts versus the giver of gifts, and that's where Jesus reverses everything. But let's read it.
Okay. And now we're talking about Jesus. He came therefore to Simon Peter, and Peter said to him, Lord, are you washing my feet? Jesus...
Now Peter perceives this pretty well in the sense of, wait a minute, you're the Messiah. You're the King. He got this.
He said this to him.
I get this. This isn't the right approach.
Why are you washing my feet?
Yeah.
Jesus answered and said to him, What I am doing you do not know now, but you will know hereafter. Peter said to him, Never may you wash my feet. And
Now, Peter is very opinionated, and there's a verse that brings to mind. You're laughing about that.
I'm laughing because you're always telling me how opinionated I am.
Well, it's better that you're hot or cold than lukewarm.
Yeah, I always say, well, at least I'm not lukewarm.
That's for sure. That's for sure. But the issue is Peter kind of oversteps the Messiah. See, he wants Jesus to be the Messiah, king, in his view of the world.
No.
So he wants to control this. And what's interesting, he sees he's the Messiah king, and he doesn't want Jesus to control it. He's going to control it.
Do we not do this with people that we look up to too, and we see them do something that's totally out of character for a leader, and we go, why are they doing that? And yet it's the proper thing to do. And I can't think of a specific example, but I know that we think, well, certain people shouldn't do certain things.
Well,
but why not?
I know, as being president of Caleb Campaign for years and years, that's the way people are. They always want to second guess and tell you how to do it. The problem is they don't have the responsibility of the action you're about to take.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime you're in leadership, any decision you make has to do with a lot of people, and it can help some and hurt some.
It's not just the one you're looking at.
And almost all decisions are like that. And that's where Jesus is giving some absolutes here.
Mm-hmm.
The king, the Messiah, is a servant. That's an absolute. And that's an absolute. If you want to be a leader, you got to be a servant.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just so key. The servant king, just radically different than the world teaches.
So Jesus answered him, If I do not wash, you have no part with me. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head.
Now he's jumped from over here to way over here.
And it kind of shows his emotional character.
But, Jesus is talking clearly here. You've got to be, this is really an allusion to you must be born again, where Nicodemus come to Jesus by night and said, and he was sneaking, that's what by night means, and he wanted Jesus to tell him what he must do to be saved. And Jesus said, you must be born again. Well, here, to be a disciple, you must be a servant. And disciples are not trying to be the leader, they're trying to be the servant leader. And that's a whole different concept of leadership.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Jesus said to him, He who has bathed needs not to wash except his feet, but to clean all over. And you, disciples, are clean, though not you all.
Okay, let's stop right there real quick.
Let me read that again, because I think
I want you to stop right there.
Okay.
The disciples, this is kind of an allusion to the idea that once you believe, you're clean.
Mm-hmm.
See, it's Christ's work that cleanses you. But you know what? You get your feet in the mud sometimes. You go out, you may lose track of your emotions. Peter here goes flip-flopping. You may do things that are not perfect, okay? That's why there's another verse in 1 John 1:9 where it says, if you confess your sin, he is faithful and righteous to forgive your sin and cleanse you from all unrighteousness. That same word of cleanse is confession is how we keep our feet clean. And we have to watch our heart. See, again, people get focused on the ceremony of feet washing. Yeah, the ceremony is not the issue. The ceremony of the Last Supper. They got focused on, well, we got to drink the wine and we got to have the cup. Okay, that's a ceremony. No, it's a picture that he dies and we receive his forgiveness through his blood. It's the picture of the hidden kingdom stuff that's here. The temple is a good example of that. The temple was to be constructed in a very specific way, but because it was a real thing in eternity, in heaven, in another place, an unseen thing. It's a different substance, and that's why it's so important to approach the Bible as a book of dual substance. That you have the kingdom of God, which is an invisible kingdom, which has power and impact on the material world. And then you have the material world, and it has its laws. And the invisible world has its laws. And which is final authority? The Bible tells us that the invisible world has authority over the visible.
And a good example of that is when they were out in the sea and Peter saw Jesus, and he said he even controls the wind and the waves.
Yeah, here's the invisible God who became a man, Jesus, controlling even the winds. That's such a good illustration. I couldn't think of a good one, and I just shut up. That's why I keep you here.
Oh, thank you.
You're good
I
at
knew there
filling.
was a reason.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so his disciples are clean, though not you all. For he,
now here he's referring
Jesus,
now to the person who's about to betray him.
Or he, Jesus, knew who was going to betray him. It was for this he said, not all of you are clean.
Yeah. Now again, not all of you have entered into the kingdom. Mm-hmm. See, Judas was never a believer. He was a fake. He was interested in the movement, but not in the internal stuff. And that people come to church and do that. They're interested and that's why you got to be careful about appealing to the flesh and the movement. And Jesus was constantly dealing with that because he would run away those who they would let them stay and listen. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure some of them came in to the kingdom, but most don't. And that's why you don't want to waste a lot of resources on those people.
Mm-hmm. That was the end of where we were going to read.
Oh, okay. Well, so it's a very it's a very key thing, and this is central to the eternal kingdom of the servant king, the servant master. But again, this is Dan and Lee in our Sunday class. .simplesite.com is where you can sign up for our newsletter. Our Sunday class.simplesite.com, or you can find us at our new webpage. Excuse me, I'm coughing up here. theroddenreporter.com, because we're putting together this series that will help people have information so they can create their own news feed to their friends and to others and give a Christian witness in every field: science, literature, history, politics, philosophy, every field, because we have amazing resources for that we've collected over our lives, and we're going to be releasing those there. So this is Dan and Lee.
Goodbye for today.
And this has been our Sunday class. Don't forget, go to our Sunday class.simplesite.com and theroddenreporter.com.